For this nice introduction. Um, I'm very pleased to be here with you today, and thanks Toby and Victoria for organizing this and for their invitation. I'd like to first start by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, upon whose our ancestral lands our city campus now stands. And I would also like to pay respect to the elders, both past and present, acknowledging them as the traditional custodians of knowledge for this land. There are seismic changes taking place across many domains and driven by the generative AI technologies. And I think we are collectively trying to figure out what all this means, how to adapt to it. And today, I hope to share some of my observations from the field of HCI and interaction design, and some insights from our work here at UTS. So it all started, it started earlier than, December 2022. So my engagement with conversational agents, specifically with conversational agents in healthcare, started in 2017. But I guess the major turning point was really right after the release of ChatGPT in late November. And 1 week after the release of it, I ran a provocation. Could an LLM act as designer, user, and product in a single session? I asked GPT to help design a well-being voice assistant for people working from home. It generated personas, it simulated interviews. I ideated with it for potential features to develop, and then I asked it to act like the product we developed, like a voice assistant with the desired features, we just ideated. And then finally, I asked it to simulate a UX evaluation with the idea that, the simulated users use this imaginary app for a week. So the results were both impressive and a bit messy. So overall, it performed well in the sense that, it completed all requests with a reasonable accuracy and relevance. But however, it got sometimes it forgot names, the previous conversations we had. Sometimes its responses felt a bit mechanical or formulaic. But beyond those, I think there was a clear signal. We have a new form of human AI collaboration, that you can talk to over multiple conversational exchanges to perform some activities. And I could see that, this can go beyond design and, cover entire, knowledge work. And I was also impressed with its ability to maintain conversational context, over multiple exchanges, and also make semantic connections between different design activities. It knew, how user research is related to ideation, how ideation outcomes can inform the development of prototype, and how it needs to be evaluated afterwards. So I think those were really the kind of main signals at the time. What changed since then? So it's almost now 3 years. We have now models that are larger, multimodal, and more agentic. They can reason about their outputs. They handle longer context, cite sources more often, and can write competition-level code. They even won gold medals in international math Olympiads recently. One major practice emerging from this development is the generative user interfaces. The main idea behind the generative user interfaces is that we may no longer need to design user interfaces in a pixel-perfect way deterministically. These generative user interfaces are user interfaces that are assembled just in time from users' intent and context, not hand-authored pixel by pixel. This idea or the vision is not novel, so maybe it's quite old. The adaptive user interfaces, context-aware computing are decades old, but now that vision is much more feasible. And the key enabler behind this is generative AI models with their advanced multimodal and coding capabilities. So when I say generative user interfaces, I think when we go back to the first release of ChatGPT, where it just produced raw text outputs, we can consider them as text-only generative user interfaces because nothing is predetermined, and then based on your input, it generates a text-only user interface. And then gradually we observe an increase in modality and in interactivity and different media in their responses. Rich text format, basic HTML outputs, then advanced HTML outputs with scripts, with UI widgets, and then finally we have web apps. We give a request and actually get a simple web application. In parallel, we see developments in image, video, and audio models getting higher fidelity. And now we see prompt to app. So basically, what you need just a good description of what you envision, what you imagine, and these models can create an app for you. That distance from idea to app, shortened. And you can see there are lots of companies providing this AI app building functionality like Bolt, Lovable, Replit, Versa, getting lots of investments. And this is, for example, Versal's generative UI support. It already provides a software development kit for developers to offer Gen UI interfaces. I think this is still in its early phases, but what I predict is going to happen is currently these prompt to app process takes from 1 minute to 10 minutes depending on the complexity of app. So you get a first version of the app, but we can easily anticipate that this will get faster, and in many cases whatever user interface need you have can be generated just in time. Here we can see what how Cloud implements generative UI. So they released this, I think, called Cloud Imagine. So it generates again UIs in real time, and it's quite magical to see it, in action. User interface, gets built in real time based on what you need. So it is possible to examine the use of generative UIs across two stages, one in design time and the other in use time. And design time refers to the design process where designers, developers are working to develop an application. And what we see here is a renaissance of throwaway prototyping. So we can spin divergent prototypes in minutes, put them in front of people and test. We can explore alternative pathways efficiently. What happens if I had a more efficiency focus? What happens if I had a more safety first approach to this interface? What happens if this was for older adults with reduced vision and mobility? For each of those cases, you can quickly explore different UI alternatives, different flows, and you get feedback. Then we have the generative user interfaces in use time. This is where users interact with. So we produce the application, and then users, are interacting with generative UIs. But I guess we may ask why we do it. So if we can design a perfect interface, why not fix it and provide it right to users? I guess what my one main motivation is the ability to personalize interfaces and make them adaptive to specific user intent and context, and reduce complexity. So users only need to see what they users only see what they need to see. So they don't need to dive deep into menus or navigate to different pages to actually execute or reach at a functionality. They have direct access to those functionalities. Of course, these kind of dynamic behavior comes with its challenges. So these non-deterministic creations, there might be variances, deviations, and when users see a different kind of UI each time, they may need to relearn the UI. But then we can have some strategies to deal with that, like using anchors, brand guidelines, or specific design systems. Then we have the challenge of what I call non-complete evaluation. Since you have endless number of user interfaces, how can you ensure your evaluation is complete, right? No new methods should be developed, and I believe here more automated evaluation and simulation-based approaches will play a role. And of course, for high stakes and safety critical situations, this non-deterministic behavior may not be suitable. So we may fall back to deterministic user interfaces. And with Gen UIs, I think we are going to operate at a higher level of abstraction. We are designing a generative system that will create the generative UIs. And we will be creating rules, instructions, guardrails, our design systems. We define the specs for AI to generate UIs. So really a higher level of abstraction. In HCI and interaction design, we've been trying to support smooth and efficient user system interaction. That was one of the main goals. But with AI, this smoothness can have unintended consequences, like design fixation or over-reliance. Design fixation refers to a situation where people prematurely settle on some existing ideas that restricts the ideation space. This was a phenomenon not specific to human AI interaction. In fact, it was also much earlier. But I think with AI, it is more pronounced. So we can extend this, again, people prematurely settling on some AI outputs that restricts the ideation space, or some AI recommendations that restrict their decision space. So in a study with 60 people, researchers found that participants who use AI to ideate produce fewer ideas with less variety and lower originality compared to a baseline. Similarly, in another study, they found the individual ideas, have high creative quality value, but the similarity between the ideas were less. So, as a group, the ideas, were more similar, although individually, the idea looked more creative. Yeah. And we can connect design fixation to some other relevant concepts like automation bias, over-reliance, and de-skilling. And these issues extend beyond ideation into domains like healthcare, education, and engineering. And studies consistently demonstrate users often prematurely fixate on AI suggestions, narrowing the exploration of diverse possibilities. This phenomenon correlates strongly with automation bias, where repeated successful interactions lead to uncritical acceptance of AI outputs and risks de-skilling over time. So here from the healthcare domain, for example, study showed that endoscopy's unassisted adenoma detection rate dropped from 28% to 22% after routine exposure to AI. Similarly, exposure to false positive AI findings led to significantly higher suspicion of aneurysms, more intense follow-ups, and reduced reading times. Part of the reason is that these tools by default are optimized for efficiency. They are not designed to support divergent thinking or to reduce over-reliance or to prevent de-skilling. And what we may need is a dual approach. On the AI side, we may incorporate some deliberate frictions, sometimes also known as speed bumps, things to slow down interaction, measures to prevent automation bias, over-reliance, and de-skilling. But this may not be enough. We may also need to train humans about these potential risks and also increase their awareness of their own behavior. To address these concerns, our research explores deliberate frictions. Here we see the user interface of our reflective ideator, which incorporates three different kinds of frictions: physical, temporal, and metaphorical. The physical friction, I'll now switch to actually the actual prototype. You can see it, right? So,
Yes.
This is an ideation tool, and we enter a design problem, and it will give us some solutions, right? Kind of we are ideating, but each time it will incorporate some frictions. So I'm now entering typical supporting older adults autonomy, like a bit, broad description. So we can provide more detail, but for the sake of this demonstration, I think this is good enough. So, and we are in the physical friction mode. What will happen is it will generate, it will provide us with these ideas in an incomplete way. So as you can see, there are places that we can't see the relevant words. So I start reading, develop an digital platform empowers elders to manage own appointments, engagements. So in a way, it slows down my consumption, and then I start to spend more cognitive effort, process it. So if I can click on it and get the actual terms, but you can see it slows down. So we can now change to temporal friction mode and generate 5 more ideas. And this time again, it will incorporate a different kind of friction. This is more kind of incorporating the element of time. So we have these boxes, we can't see the solutions yet. And when I click play, it gradually displays the idea word by word. Develop intuitive smart home systems that allow older adults to control their environment and stay connected independently. I can click on this. Again, there is this, slowing down, so I can't really consume them, immediately. So that's the temporal friction. And finally, we have the metaphorical one, which increases the abstraction level of ideas. A personal concierge in their pocket. So yeah, as you can see, I can sense what it may be, but still a bit cryptic. A digital town square for connection, a lifelong learning garden. If I want, I can click and get more literal description. A creative platform offering accessible courses and workshops on new technologies, hobbies, skills, etc. So yeah, this was our attempt to incorporate some frictions. Let's go back to the presentation. And we did a pilot with 6 designers. While initial results revealed mostly user frustration due to lack of control and misalignment with their immediate goals, they also indicated friction's potential to encourage more cognitive engagement. I think one major insight was really related to the mindset needed. Kind of, we need to have aligned mindset with the system and the users. People need to be open to this kind of frictions, otherwise this won't work. So one participant 5 said, I wasn't looking to be creative. I was just looking for an answer. You see, in this kind of mindset, so it is hard to. So there needs to be kind of a readiness and openness, and they ask for more control, in managing those frictions. This experience made us think other kinds of frictions we can explore. These can be more process-oriented frictions, highlighting the value of human AI co-creation and partnership. Can we make the ideation process itself as rewarding as the final idea? So in the next prototype, we will explore the idea of collaboration as friction. Let's look at it. All right. So this time we have our eccentric ideator. And I'll just demonstrate. I think it will speak for itself. Supporting older adults' autonomy. And it will ask us to create a persona. So this is a persona, what I call an eccentric persona, with a quite different, demographics, life story, worldviews. And the rationale behind this, by adopting this unusual eccentric persona, LLM can, generate more unconventional, novel ideas. So that's the expectation. So it is now creating a notably odd persona. Its name is Silas Synapse Ran, the conceptual cartographer of unseen connections. An early childhood spent meticulously cataloging the discarded and forgotten items from a defunct antique shop owned by his reclusive great aunt, leading him to see intrinsic value and hidden narratives. Appears late 60s, meticulously disorganized, attic library. So we have information about core beliefs, primary values, information process, primary mode of reasoning, very detailed, ways of thinking about things relating to things. So you can edit this, but again, to save time, I'll go ahead. Now we have the persona, we have the design problem. I'll ask it to generate ideas. So, and I expect them to be ideally more novel, but it won't end there. So because, this is supposed to be more, a, process-oriented collaborative. So we will have some more things to experience. So let's wait for the ideas to come.
And Baki, I see already the reflection timer. Does it mean the temporal?
Exactly. If you
Yeah,
want,
right?
you can
Yeah.
slow down. The little connection with that. Yeah. So yeah, we have now very detailed, as you see, ideas. The Chronicle Waiver Network, a digital physical platform establishing localized Chronicle Waiver collectives, where older adults act as bespoke knowledge creators and project mentors. Participants independently scope, design, and lead intergenerational projects from documenting local history through oral tradition, etc. So, and more, description about the rationale, other ideas. And sometimes, these can appear too, again, abstract. You can ask the tool to translate the idea to more concrete technological. So, okay, sounds good, but what am I going to do, right? Kind of. And then it will give you more concrete ideas. Waiver Workbench project management and mentorship platform, an intuitive, accessible digital platform featuring a visual project canvas for older adults, independent scope, design track, intergenerational projects. So, getting more concrete. Now, okay, you can read all these ideas, but let's say, you like the first idea a lot, right? and you want to explore it more, and you deep dive into, this idea. Now we will generate a virtual panel of personas with different background and expertise. One from problem domain, then a domain expert, a critical designer, an ethicist, and a venture capitalist. So from different angles, they will evaluate your idea and give you feedback. And we will run kind of a virtual panel discussion. We have Eleanor Vance, retired local historian, community volunteer, 78-year-old, spent 30 years as a high school history teacher, deeply involved in local historical societies. We have motivations, perspective, user code. Kenji Tanaka, professor of social gerontology, director of community aging initiatives. Critical designer, Anya Sharma. Lead architect, decentralized knowledge systems, and managing partner, Zenith Ventures. Now they are reading our idea and providing, feedback, and we will see their first comments shortly. So here the idea is really being exposed to different perspectives, right? So in a way, it is less about, getting the idea very fast and efficiently, but going into this journey, as an, this ideation process as a journey. So Eleanor says, idea has a real promise. The notion of older adults like myself acting as knowledge creators, project mentors, that truly resonates. I've got lifetime stories and wisdom sitting in my head, just waiting for the right ears. The idea of independently leading intergenerational projects, especially around localist role tradition. So, really, providing their own perspective. And again, that some are positive, some are negative, particularly, with the business perspective. What you might do, because this is a panel session, you can run another discussion round. This time, each persona will read all the feedback and build on them, like, comment on others' ideas. So really, you are running a virtual panel session here. And really, if you read them, it's really, insightful. It's really a rewarding experience. So here, the friction is a process, like, it doesn't feel like an obstacle, right? Because, you gain more value out of it. So we are, in a way, rethinking the, workflow, in a way, human AI ideation workflow, creating a new workflow, but it actually, improves, divergence, it improves decision quality.
Baki, we have already a question by Paul.
Baki, this is super interesting. Coming back to your statement that the usage of AI is some sort of having reduced creativity. Did you make an experiment, like having a panel, a live panel versus having like the simulation panel? And did you notice any difference?
Yeah, with this one, we did a study with the previous prototype, this one, and as I said, it felt a bit, I think, too harsh as a friction. So usually resulted in, a bit frustrations and annoyances. With this one, we haven't tested this yet. So my earlier comments, mostly relied on, other studies, reporting on, a less variety, more fixation, etc. But, there are, of course, some caveats, like, because if you prompt carefully in such a way that, you want more divergent, a more divergent process, and then maybe, it can change things. But usually users, they have a tendency to, tendency for efficiency, right? They want to get the right idea very quickly, right? And they tend to like, maybe first set of ideas more. So those are some, evidence. But for this particular, more collaboration as friction, model, we haven't run the study yet.
Thanks for sharing.
Thanks for your question. So yeah, now we have another round of discussion, and you see, we have a lot more here in terms of feedback. What you can do, you can also summarize the discussion. Ask to the tool to create a summary. So, and it will generate kind of a list of items as the major feedback. And what you can do, you can select the ones maybe that resonates most and revise your original idea. So addressing those feedback. Of course, I do it here a bit in an accelerated way, but you can read, debate, you can go back and run another round, etc. So this is really, the main idea here. And we will shortly see the updated, idea description of yes. So it should, take this idea feedback from the panel, as a summary statements and revise this, a original solution idea. And then, it doesn't have to end there. You can continue to get feedback, or you can actually go back and focus on the problem itself. You can also run a similar panel session to, I don't know what's going on here. Maybe it doesn't like something. So you can run the similar virtual panel to get feedback on your original problem description. Maybe your original description was described poorly, right? Or you are missing some important dimensions. So you can also revise it in a similar way. Okay.
Baki, maybe a quick question on that. This AI persona, should this really represent a crowd of similar people? Because there's also this other concept of digital twin, which is very precise person. Would you maybe miss with an AI persona a couple of other relevant cases? And can you simulate maybe a couple of personas in the future, or what is your idea regarding that, to not miss out on representativeness? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So this is in a way the first phase of this idea, collaboration as friction. So we can easily integrate some data-driven personas, like you have some data and you want to define particular personas and incorporate into your panel. So they don't need to be, created from scratch, relying on, language models' own knowledge. So definitely. And there was some feedback on this, like, look, can I actually talk with particular members, panel members, like, kind of sub conversations. So there are such ideas for, further development. So yeah, this is kind of, I'm quite excited about. But I think it is really, compared to earlier, so earlier frictions, they may look a bit rudimentary, but I believe they will have a place, right? But I think this sort of, rethinking the workflow, how do we, make the process more process focused rather than the outcome. Outcome is important, but at the same time, how do we make the process also, rewarding and insightful?
Great,
and here,
thanks.
You're welcome. Here, as a summary, we don't just receive ideas, we arrive at them through debate, iterations, and explicit choices in a joint ideation journey with the goals of supporting divergent thinking, curiosity, increasing coverage with different perspectives, feedback, and ultimately, hopefully, enhancing the decision quality. Now coming back to specific, more relevant to, digital twins, Toby. This is another emerging practice, again, enabled by generative AI, use of simulation and synthetic personas. These are like high fidelity, synthetic users, creating high fidelity synthetic users are now cost effective, scalable, and efficient. And we can simulate people, scenarios, and situations. And generative AI lowered the barrier for creating such high-fidelity simulations that are increasingly more realistic, physical laws compliant, and more interactive. But of course, with high fidelity, it comes with some limitations of these generative AI models, like they have biases, there are hallucinations, they show sycophancy and overconfidence, and we have this illusion of realism that may lead to overtrust. So you may know this study. This is a remarkable study that shows strong alignment between synthetic and real user data. What they did was they recruited over 1,000 people and they interviewed them for 2 hours. And then they asked these people to complete a survey. Excuse me, trying to find my cursor. Anyway, so they asked them to fill out a survey, and then they used that each 2-hour interview transcript to create these AI digital twins of 1,000 people, and ask those digital twins to fill out the same survey. And what they found, their responses were 85% aligned. I guess even humans maybe 85% aligned. If I do the same survey, right, there might be some variances. So this is really remarkable. But at the same time, there is another research showing, okay, although overall accuracy might be aligned with human responses, there is reduced variability in those responses. So, you see less human-like variance with the responses. When I came across this blog post from A16Z, like I was really shocked because there are already a lot of startups, allowing you to, recruit synthetic users for your, studies or, for your work. And then there's a recent review showing there are more than 50 articles using generative AI to create personas. And they found, they usually, there's a lack of diversity in the models they use. There are major gaps also in evaluation. Our own research, so with UX designers, so in this one, we had the motivation to address limitations of traditional personas, which were like one-page static descriptions of target population groups, and they have limited user engagement. There's lack of interactivity with them, and so we really wanted to explore, okay, what happens when you can talk with a simulated persona in a design process across different activities. So this is kind of a continuation of my earlier study, but now we have more powerful models. What we found, static personas were valuable for rapid real-time feedback, despite consistent over-optimism and concerns about bias and realism. So I guess over-optimism was one highlight, really. We saw that whatever designers were suggested, the response, oh, that's a great idea, you should go for it. Like, oh, that's fantastic. So as if there is no downsides. So I think that is really, again, those sycophantic, tendencies. So there might be ways, so you can, prompt engineer, okay, can you play devil's advocate, etc. But as in their vanilla form, so they are over-optimistic. And we recommended that, these simulated personas should complement, not replace real user research and engagement. We also noticed junior designers were more susceptible to over-trusting synthetic user feedback, showing the importance of deliberate training and clear frameworks for responsible use. And in the paper, we introduced this responsible use framework for virtual AI personas, covering ethics, bias, iterative refinement, need for a complementary research, and critical evaluation. And coming back to the digital health. So as I briefly mentioned, fixation, over-reliance, and de-skilling can happen across different domains. And how to prevent them? Of course, we can use frictions, and we could also, I think, inspire from the aviation practice, because they have been working with these highly automated systems, autopilot system, and there's a risk of over-reliance and de-skilling there. And what they do, for example, they require certain amount of manual flight time, right? So you need to really, fly manually. So similarly, I guess we may require, healthcare professionals to complete a minimal amount of manual work threshold, AI of, clinic sessions. I don't. But again, this is a bit future looking. Currently, maybe, they don't use it much, but again, this will, be more relevant. Again, when we look at aviation practice, so they expect pilots to engage with flight simulators, and in these simulations, there are different scenarios, error cases for allowing them to stay sharp. Similarly, healthcare professionals can regularly interact with simulated cases, maybe situations with wrong AI outputs, missing data, or some difficult failure cases. And again, another inspiration. So in aviation, you have usually one pilot flying, one pilot monitoring. So one makes an initial decision and the other verifies. Can we have perhaps a human first approach? So for example, a doctor needs to make a judgment or make some I guess a diagnosis, and then receives the AI's opinion or suggestions, like more human first approach, again to reduce fixation. One important advantage that I mentioned was the intent and context-based personalization. So we are in a way moving from categorical patient profiles to more granular and scalable treatment of interface generation based on specific devices, literacy, age, language, and their endless combinations. So for each combination, a new genuine specification can be defined, and that can be rendered by AI as a new user interface. And this can potentially increase user engagement with its more granular, context-sensitive adaptation. And we can also expect new dark patterns to emerge. For example, I show like a panel of personas, but they may actually converge into some sort of maybe misleading consensus. There may be varieties of sycophancy that may be hard to notice. We already have now these follow-up questions and such. Do you want me to do that? Do you want me to do this, right? So in a way, it's, making us, stay engaged with the, app. And finally, going back to the simulation, there are lots of emerging studies using LLMs for patient and physician conversations, training doctors with patients, getting LLMs to act like patients, to interpret discharge summaries, etc. Furthermore, synthetic data, while seemingly privacy preserving, risks exposing sensitive information through memorization and inference attacks. So there needs to be extra precautions and measures to prevent them. And rigorous validation methods for synthetic personas remain underdeveloped, and existing AI frameworks have yet to conclusively demonstrate improvements in tangible health outcomes. This concludes my talk. I included one cartoon from ChatGPT with its obvious text errors, and it'll note. Thank you, and happy to answer your questions.
Thank you so much, dear Baki. And yeah, let's give him a lot of virtual and also real applause. Wonderful and highly relevant work. I'm really intrigued by the, idea of friction and can absolutely connect to it. I think it is really important to motivate people to really think hard again and not just to let go and let generate.
Yeah, it is so easy to, be, I guess, to have the efficiency focus or really feel lazy, right? So, I am a very experienced user. I sometimes find myself doing it. So really, both we need, that dual approach, right? These tools need to incorporate such, features, more diversified values. When you look at, reinforcement learning, right? Again, it has this, efficiency focus. So we need, more, diversified values incorporated into those systems so that we can have that sort of a behavior. And also we need to be a bit more aware of our own behavior and attitude.
Absolutely, which brings us back to the hardest thing still, with all the great Gen AI things that are happening, which is changing human behavior and really putting effort into things to come up with something really good at the end. It doesn't come for free, I think. It's also the bottom line. You have to put effort still, even into.
Absolutely. And I think, I include in my last slide, this generative turn really rewards, a hands-on approach, like playful, curious, approach, and also reflective. These prototypes really, I had some initial ideas, but, I really built them in an iterative way with AI actually, right? But, this, what you call vibe coding, right? You get into flow, you show people, get feedback, incorporate them. So otherwise, eccentric idea, it is very hard to envision such a system from scratch. Like, you need to immerse yourself into that sort of, I guess, work and engagement. Yeah.
Okay, great, wonderful, wonderful. So, Paul raised the hand, so please.
Thanks. With regard to introducing friction into the LLMs, did you use the same LLM to introduce the friction and just had a nice prompt, or did you deliberately use a different tool?
So I tried two different tools. So one is really a Gemini, because it is the default. So I usually develop prototypes within AI Studio, Google's AI Studio, and it defaults to Gemini model. But then I can transfer it to use different API. It can be OpenAI or cloud. In this case, I also use OpenAI. But here, I think your specific prompts are more critical than the model used. Now, frontier models are more or less comparable in their performance. So how your specific prompts really shape their how they provide outputs. So in this case, yeah, I think a Gemini works fine for me. But for example, if I had this more like efficiency focus, okay, like I want really this first time best idea, most creative, then you may rely on the highest performing, even if it's a little model. In this case, we don't need that because it's process oriented, right? And in the process, back and forth, I direct AI with my selections and choices, and it works fine. So it's usually I would say prompt engineering, to getting those specific, precise responses.
Okay, thanks.
Who else has a comment or question? Rebecca.
Hello, Baki. Thank you so much. That was such an interesting lecture. I am joining from Germany and I'm fairly new to this space, but I was fascinated by the idea of friction and eccentric ideation. I think I'm wondering if you see a situation where stakeholder discussions or advisory panels are going to completely be replaced by virtual personas, or is this a first step and you still move on to the next stage? So I'm thinking in the context of maybe healthcare medical device development, where maybe you do save a lot in terms of your usability testing budget if you could go virtually.
Yeah, thanks for your question, Rebecca. So there are a few things. So currently, so this is a future-looking, this was a future-looking talk. Currently, as in the current form, I think they work well in the early stages of a design or research process, right? So you get, for example, some directional insights rather than facts, right? That you can rely on. So, for example, with maybe there are some vulnerable populations, right, that are hard to access. So you in a way can use them at early stage to get those get a sense of the space of considerations, concerns that you need to pay attention to. But as part of my research, I really want to develop these validated personas, working with, actual users, user groups, different stakeholders, getting their input, using these personas and validate. So these, evaluation validations are still open research problems, but, we will explore what we can do. But I think that will be an important step. And that will allow us to go beyond early stages into later stages, right? Eventually, I guess maybe we can have these really validated, virtual persona repositories, right? And you may have these persona cards, which models use, validation methods, right? Some certificates, and maybe the bias, ratings, etc. And then, you can use that, more reliably, confidently, and responsibly in many work or studies. So that is kind of a gradual, I think, path we will most likely see.
Okay, thank you. That's really interesting. And just a little comment of something that came up. So I think what I really liked about the eccentric ideation and your process was that when you try to brainstorm with, say, ChatGPT right now, it gives you a large amount of text that you don't necessarily want to read through. So I think this process of breaking it down is really helpful. Is this something that you're planning to make public anytime in the near future, or is it already
Yes,
available?
I will release it. There are a few bugs, it happened in the presentation, so it's almost there. There are also some feature requests like can I talk to specific panel members, having these specific chat rooms, etc. So I may include, but yeah, I plan to release it soon. So yeah, and I'll definitely let you know. So yeah, there's really, I think so far the feedback has been quite positive from people I shared this work. So we want to also run a formal study to understand whether it really is helpful in terms of really improving the decision quality, or in terms of being exposed to diverse perspectives and feedback.
Lovely. I'm looking forward to that then. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Okay, wonderful. I think we have time for one last comment or question. So please think hard and raise your hand. I'll be silent forever, at least for this session. It seems this is not the case. Then maybe, Baki, a final comment on my end or question is, what is the next big step, research project you look very much forward to? Probably further developing and releasing what you have shown today, but
Yeah.
something else?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, yeah, I'm a bit, I guess, too excited about these ideas I present. So actually, currently there are multiple projects in, generative user interfaces, frictions, simulated personas. There are like connections between them. So I guess currently, yeah, frictions together with personas, I think they are like converging. This is the, I guess, most, I guess, exciting area. But with generative UIs, one of my students exploring this, again, in design time, with what I call renaissance of, rapid throwaway prototyping. Like, how can we use, now that, process is shortened, right? How can we use these generative UIs to explore, these alternative futures, different pathways, and how can they, allow us to, maybe be more inclusive in our, design solutions. So.
Okay, great. I wish you and your team all the best of luck. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, maybe we do also some activities together with Felix in our Grace project. I think your example today was spot on for that one, and I look very much forward to follow up.
Same here. Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to, collaborating with you again. And yeah, thanks again. Thanks for listening. And hopefully, it was insightful and interesting.
Absolutely. I wish you all the best of luck, and all the others and all of you, all the best of health. As you know, my closing words, do something for it as well. Very important, especially now in times, at least in Europe, when it's getting cold outside. So take care. I wish you all the best. And as Victoria mentioned, the final keynote will happen on the 18th of November with Dr. Samantha Riemann from Psychiatry University Clinic. And again, an LLM topic. So see you then.